plants. The green frontier. These are the discussions of the podcast Horticult. Its continuing mission: to talk about strange new cultivars, to seek out new flowers and plant them, to boldly garden like no one has before. Hey, this is Blaine from the Horticult. What's up, everybody? This is number 46, Saving Tender Bulbs. So the winter is upon us, and if we don't get our tender bulbs out of the ground, they will die. So we have this podcast to say how to remove them, store them, and keep them for spring. There's a couple things that you got to remember. We go over the stages of how to do it, the process step by step. The cold is a factor, but it's also wetness, and the wetness causes disease and rot in those bulbs. So we're removing them from that cold, wet environment and putting them in a drier, warmer environment. There you go. And I'm doing this with my bulbs. So I have my dahlias. I pulled them out the other day and I put them in the storage and went through this process. So I'm right there with you, and it's just fun to try to keep going with it. Year-round gardening, this is one way to do that. Take them and store them. So I just want to remind everybody that we have a Twitter page that you can follow us on, at The Horticult, our webpage, thehorticult.com, Facebook page, The Horticult Facebook page. There's a theme to this. Thank you for your support, and let's get it on. I'm Blaine.
And this is Be Radical.
And we are the Horticult. Thanks for listening, podlings. And today, episode, we're going to go into saving tender bulb. This, in our climate, we have to deal with the winter. And some of our beloved plants that are bulbs can't overwinter out in the garden. So our idea is to harvest these bulbs or plants or whatever.
The tubers of the
tubers
plant. Yeah.
And save them for spring. Mm-hmm. So they can't be in the cold ground, but they could be, like, if we lived in a better state, better. If we lived in a warmer climate, then it wouldn't be an issue. We could just leave these bulbs in the ground. Like my sister up in Washington can leave her dahlias in the ground, but I gotta remove them.
Yeah. Colder,
longer, and it kills the bulbs. So that is one. Oh, we just... Dahlias.
Yep.
So that's the idea. That's the premise of this podcast.
So dahlias, a lot of you may have heard of canna lilies, kind of that tropical, big, broad leaf, really cool pattern on there. And it has the really beautiful lily-style leaf. So canna lilies, dahlia bulbs, another one that elephant ear. You don't see that in landscape that often here, but it's possible to overwinter those.
That was one of my favorite plants that we had at Marinda, because it's very super tropical. It almost kind of looks like banana leaf, you know. It kind of has that kind of look to it. But we had those at Marinda too. Maybe yes, I'm thinking of the wrong ones.
No, those giant bananas and the elephant ear.
Yeah, and we would try to keep them over. We'd move them inside. We put them in pots. We would grow them indoors so it would keep them alive. And then we tried to save them and overwinter them inside.
Yeah.
And we got lucky with a few. But I think we had the right idea at heart, but for the most part, we were not very successful. We had a very low percentage of success. Well, I kind of look at it as we don't plan for it. You know, it's not something that I think of, I'm going to plant dahlias and I'm going to harvest the tubers and keep them over. It's kind of like a bonus if I can manage it, if I can figure out exactly what they need and get them in the ground next spring and have something happen.
Yeah.
It's okay. So it's a small percentage to leave them in the ground. Boop. They're gone. There's 0%. So I try for it.
Yeah. So, and this would be for the gardeners out there that have a little bit of extra time on their hands, and are interested in saving these tender bulbs and tubers. Not necessarily on a financial standpoint or like economical standpoint, although that's a really good reason why to do it. But it's more to you're propagating. You're propagating these plants, because ultimately what happens is when you store them over winter, divisions happen, and so then you'll end up with more the next year. But here's some experiences that I've had in the past, and I've seen success on doing this. And at Red Butte Garden, we had a bunker, kind of an underground bunker, but it really mimicked quite a bit what a homeowner would have in their basement, right? Cold temperatures, dark. So you really want that environment. But first things first, you go in and you dig these tubers and bulbs up. So you harvest them at the end of the year, when the ground is still pliable, workable. So, right around October is a great time to do it. Anyway, so you dig these up, you shake off the loose soil and dirt, and then you let them cure, so the skin of that tuber will then harden. It'll create kind of an impermeable, like a layer around that, that will. The reason why it does that is it holds the moisture in. So it's now, it's like a little reservoir of water and starch and sugars that it has packed into these tubers, and that is what's going to get it from the fall to the spring, not being in soil, or not being in soil as we know it. Anyway, so your job is to go ahead and shake that soil off, that dirt, let them cure, let them dry for at least a week. And then at that point, they're ready to be stored. So the crucial point here would be to use a container that has holes in it, not just holes in the bottom, but definitely the top and the sides. And this isn't a perfect situation, a perfect scenario. What comes to mind are those bulb crates, those black plastic bulb crates.
Yep.
Has like the vents on the side of it, those holes on the side of it. That would be the ultimate container, because you get good airflow from the bottom, from the sides, and then from the top. But rather than leaving the bulbs just all stacked in there, the best way to do it is to layer it, almost kind of create a little bed of sawdust or peat moss, and then layer those bulbs in there.
Because they come in like like when you order bulbs, they come with like in a box that usually has some sort of
that insulating,
like straw or that kind of environment for them as they're traveling. I mean, we'd have to dig them out and find them or whatever, and I'd have to count them out.
Yeah, and it's a twofold. The reason why that media works so well is, one, it can help wick away unwanted moisture from the bulb, but then two, it can also help insulate and protect the moisture that bulb or tuber has, to then keep it so it's not in a hot, sunny location. It's not near a heater. The wind is not desiccating it, so it's just in a protected area. And then finally, what I've noticed helps with that is burlap laid on top of the crate or the container that you have that's damp. So you dampen that burlap, and then you lay it on the top, and it holds there's moisture in that little kind of humidish area, but there's not direct moisture touching the bulb. That's the environment that you want to achieve. And You may have to go and get the burlap wet every so often throughout the winter months and lay it back over that container. It is possible to plant them in a soilless mix. Keep them down in your basement where it's cool and there's not a lot of light. The problem with that is sometimes those bulbs will make it through the winter, and then you're ready to rock and roll and plant. But if those bulbs sprout, they will be using the energy that they normally would need to store to get through the winter in sprouting, and then they're going to lose size and vigor. And if it does survive, it'll be much smaller, weaker, and that's fine. If you can get it to survive, that's the key.
So in that, with the sprouting, could you maybe take it and use it as like an indoor plant and just have an indoor plant going on? Because it's already sprouting. Give it the light it needs. Give it the water. Don't treat it like you're storing it anymore. Treat it like you're growing it
an
indoors.
Indoor plant.
Yeah.
You absolutely could. So if you were to do that, just remember a couple of important things. As with indoor house plants, you want to make sure you don't overwater it, and you want to make sure that you can try to give it as much light as you can. So artificial light at the very least, or near a window, or any kind of environment like that would be good. But yeah, that way it can photosynthesize. It can kind of just maintain zero balance of like carbs, not gaining or not reducing. It's just going to stay right in the middle. Whereas when you're storing these bulbs, these tender bulbs and tubers, from the minute you pull it out of the ground and then it cures and it hardens somewhat, it's slowly going to start desiccating. And you want to try to minimize the amount that it dries out and desiccates over the winter time. So thus the cool temperatures and everything. The problem lies, the reason why these bulbs can't really make it through our winters is the cold for sure, but even more than the cold is the wet soil surrounding that tuber and bulb. And then the cold comes in, and it's just like this factory for disease to just go in there and completely rot the bulb and tuber out. And so if you were to keep one or the other of those components away from each other, you may have success. So dry, super dry cold would be better than wet cold. You know what I'm saying? Like wet freeze. So the expectations that you're going to observe and see as spring comes, late winter, spring, is as you unpack those, and feel free to take a look at those bulbs throughout the winter and just double check and make sure that they're not shrinking in size too much. They will shrink a little bit, and if they do start to kind of crinkle up a little bit, go ahead and re-wet that burlap or mist the media just a little bit. But anyway, expectations are once you pull them out, you unpack them, they will be a little bit smaller. So they will shrink in size, hopefully not by much. But go ahead and cull out the rotten, diseased, any of them that have shrunk to nothing, basically. Go ahead and throw that portion out, and you're ready to plant. Pretty much the same depth that they were planted originally. So give them 2 to 3 times the depth of the size of that tuber or bulb. And so if it's a little corm, like a crocus or a gladiola or freesia corm, they're going to be much, much smaller. So you plant them more shallow. Another quick item to mention that's a really, really good idea prior to putting them away in storage is, just depends on where you're at with fungicides. Are you okay with that or not? Is to dust them with a fungicide.
I'm down with fungicides. So
Yeah.
you're saying be more organic.
Well, it just depends. I mean, some don't even want to, keep that stuff in the house.